Woo! We are here, ladies and gentlemen. And we are talking about real sports talk, baby. A branch of Truth Be Told. Check us out. We are everywhere. We just opened up a Twitter account. We got a Gmail account. Look us up, man. I'm going to introduce the players. I am your host, Scott Baker, the sports analyst extraordinaire. And to my right, I have the New York General himself, Luis Fernandez.
Good day to all.
And sitting in with us again, the ever so clever Vinny Fernandez.
What's up? Let's get it on.
Now, we have been having a heated debate off air, and we had to get in here and record this. We're talking about the NFL, man. We're going to start at the NFL. All these big hits, fines, what's your take on it? What's your spin on it? Because there's a lot of controversy on what's acceptable, what's a good hit, what's a bad hit, what's too much, what's illegal. And I know for me, I have a huge problem with the way the NFL is going. Lou, we're going to let you start it out. Give us your take, give us your spin on what's going on, man.
Well, myself and Vinny had a real heated discussion yesterday about specifically James Harrison. And we pulled up a whole bunch of his hits on YouTube, which I recommend highly to the audience that they go to YouTube and check out some of those hits, slow it down, whatever. So that way you can have a little background on it. But we pulled up one specific sequence of hits, which I believe it was 4 hits that he had been fined for. And I generally did not have any qualms with any of the hits, other than one. That was the hit that he made on Mohamed Massaquoi of the Browns. I believe that in that play, A, he led with his helmet, and B, he threw his forearms out in a motion that created this after effect to add to it. And not only that, he left his feet, which I don't think is necessary when you're going to make a tackle. Now, the contention here amongst these football players, I've never played organized football. I've been watching it for 40 years. But the contention amongst my two football scholars here is that that's necessary it's necessary to blow up the opponent in order to send a message, don't come through this middle, or I'm going to take you out. Which is something that I totally agree with. I mean, that's football. That's the football I grew up with. I grew up with the Oakland Raiders of the 70s, the Steelers, the Steel Curtain. Okay, you don't get names, you don't get names like that because, you're just playing tag football. You're knocking people out, you're sending a message. Unfortunately, the times have changed, and the NFL is making $9 billion a year, which means they're pulling in people who don't know, who 20 years ago, 40 years ago, would not have watched football.
Women.
And so now, anytime that a sport becomes more popular, the hitting's gonna go away. I use the example of the NFL, where there's a big contention now where people who are not used to old-time hockey don't want to see fighting. They think that fighting is not necessary. And all the hockey purists are going, that's not possible. You can't take fighting out of hockey. And their contention, the other people's contention is that, you need to get out of the Middle Ages and you need to, come into the modern era. So that's basically what we came down to. I only had a problem with one hit that I saw James Harrison make on like I said, the one on Mohamed Massaquoi. I felt like he led with his helmet. I felt like the follow through with after the impact with his forearm was a little bit much. He was so much bigger than the cat. All he had to do was just hit him, and he would have gone down anyway.
I have a problem with that statement right there because you're playing in the NFL. You're playing with the best. You're playing with the strongest, the fastest, the biggest athletes on the planet.
Yes.
All right. At the moment, right now, if I'm James Harrison, I'm laying the wood on anybody who comes by me. I'm the best linebacker. I want to be the best of the best. I want to be feared. That's what a defensive player was. I played defensive end in high school. Whenever I hit somebody, I never stopped to think about, oh, how will this hit affect them? Oh, maybe I should back off a little bit. Oh, this guy's small. Maybe I shouldn't hit him hard. No. I hit everybody the same way. Hard, intense, aggressive. All right? There's a culture in the NFL. And this is a culture that the public do not know about. And they shouldn't know about because it's a totally different world. Now, if you're from a different world, you can't come into somebody else's planet and tell them how to do things. James Harrison does this for a living. I contend that we as spectators should, we are the buying party. It is a business in NFL. It is a business first and foremost, absolutely. But I contend that you don't go into a man's world in the NFL and tell him how to tackle. You have players who have been doing this for years, and you're telling them now that they can't do the same thing. You know, it's conflicting. All right, it's very conflicting. You on a defensive side of the ball, you're celebrated when you make big hits. Take big hits out of the NFL, you're taking a big part of the NFL away.
That banging sound you just heard was Scott hitting his head against the table.
Okay. First off, when we sign up for football, you know what you're signing up for. Football is a violent sport.
It's a collision sport.
Period. It's not violent with an asterisk on the side of it. It's not violent with rules. It's a violent sport. When I signed up, I knew the risk involved. I knew the potential health hazards. I knew the injuries that I could incur. And let me give a shout out. I had some of the best fucking coaches you've never had in high school. We went to 2 state championships in my 4 years. Shout out to Eldon Evans. Shout out to Bob Myers. Shout out to Dan Bogan. And most recently passed, my personal line coach, Lyle McFadden, who taught me more about life than damn near my dad did. So shout out to them cats. I had some wonderful coaches. Now.
And you won 2 championships.
No, we didn't win.
You didn't win, but
We
you
went
made
there-
it to the.
We went there.
You got to the
We
championship
were
game
ranked,
twice.
my junior year, we were ranked 15th in the nation.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
In the USA poll. We were ranked 15th in the nation my junior year. So I know a little bit about good football.
Hey, I'll tell you now, it's better than my high school career, man.
She went to Berkeley.
I went to Berkeley High School. Shout out to Berkeley High School. Y'all get it together soon.
We were taught to be relentless. We were taught to have no mercy. We were taught that you want that. I remember my coach saying it. He said, usually by the second half, because my coach was a Hall of Fame collegiate player. He played linebacker and fullback in college and was unstoppable on both ends. He had the picture of his office of 2 people hanging on his legs and him reaching to the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
He was huge. Coach Bogan was about 6'4", maybe 220, 230. He was huge. But he was very athletic, very strong. He was our defensive coach.
Right.
He said, usually when I play, by the second half, whoever I was going up against had to be subbed out because he couldn't take anymore. He didn't want anymore. I had instilled so much fear in him with my relentlessness that was a player we didn't even have to count on. They had 10 defenders instead of 11. So when I see this new NFL with this emphasis on big hits, you're completely killing your brand, first off. Because all of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, all you promoted was big hits, big hits, big hits. When you think about all the Mean Joe Greens and the Lawrence Taylors and Brian Urlacher,
Ray
Lewis, all these guys, why are they popular?
The hits.
Not because they know how to tackle properly, but because they know how to limit you motionless.
Lay you out.
And for me, that was a selling point for football. Because as you know, in the African American community, there are not many outlets legally to release your aggression. Football was therapy for me. It allowed me to channel my anger and use it in a way that was positive and for a common good of a team. So when I see these rules being made, and another problem is, you should never have non-football people making football decisions. That's the first thing.
That's my biggest qualm.
Football is getting to the point to where it's becoming more of a business than a sport. And that's a huge problem. Nobody is talking about that. Yes, it made $9 billion last year, but why? Why? Because of all that it entails. The big catches, the big runs, and the big hits. They all go hand in hand.
But
we want to see all those things.
But look at football today. Last year, you had a team in the Super Bowl who was 31st in defense.
31st in defense.
You had a team who almost went undefeated who was 32nd in defense. You have these teams. Defense is not prioritized in the NFL anymore. I contend that it's really becoming an offensive sport. It's becoming an offensive sport, and defense is being shunned.
An offensive sport and a passing game. Because even running backs. I love football with Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Thurman Thomas. I love those guys. Those were exceptional running backs. Now running backs are nothing but receivers that go out in the flats. Screens. Option.
Oh, trust me. I watched the Miami Dolphins the perfect season, and that was my first Super Bowl. Watching that season, and I don't know that Bob Greasy threw 10 passes in that Super Bowl. It was Larry Zarka, right down the middle.
Couldn't stop it.
And they couldn't stop it, and he just got the ball over and over and over again. And I understand. That's the football that I grew up with. I mean, Joe Namath made the Pro Football Hall of Fame with less than a 50% completion percentage, because in those days, if you threw the ball, you were throwing the ball 30, 40 yards down the field. You weren't making those little dink and dunk passes. In those days, the only guy who did that was Fran Tarkenton. And he wound up having all of the football records when he retired, but he didn't have the respect because people thought that's pussy football, but frankly, that's the football that's being played right now.
80% of the hits that I have seen fine have not been illegal. Now, you can say vicious. Yes, that's the sport.
The sport is vicious.
That's the sport.
Get over it.
That's why football was such an exclusive club, because it's only certain type of men that can do this.
But now more people are getting into the sport.
You're opening it up to where you can let anybody play football now.
More people are following it. Remember, we're in a society now where they give trophies to everybody on every team in youth football and in Little League. Okay, there isn't any distinction between the good players and the bad players. Okay, because everybody has to, they basically pussified sports. Because I always go to the Aesop fable, the goose with the gold that laid the golden eggs. And eventually, the guy wanted more gold, and he cut him open, and he wound up, losing everything, because that's not how he could produce those. And that's what's happening to football. I also equate it to what happened in the NBA, where all of a sudden you can't hand check. You can't. Everything's a flagrant foul.
Can't cross over.
Don't get me started on the NBA. The NBA, I can barely watch a game. All right, home court advantage is everything because you have the referees on your side. Phil Donahue, that whole scandal, it's still rearing its head today.
Before we change gears, there was something Lou said that really bothered me, and he was talking about the James Harrison hit, and he was talking about the irons being brought up. So what? Like, I played offensive tackle, offensive guard, fullback, defensive tackle, defensive end. So I've been on both sides. The advantage of being on defense is you can use your hands. Offense, you can't use your hands. You get called for holding extremely quick. But defense, your advantage is using your hands, violent hands. Even as defensive lineman, my first initial weapon, I'm coming off the ball and trying to get in your chest. If I can get you popped back on your heels, it's over. You're not going to recover because I'm not going to stop. And the same thing when you're dealing with a guy and then somebody's throwing a pass across the middle. You get your hands in there to get the ball down, or you put him down. And all of these things really build an offense, because you're like, okay, we can't go across the middle because he's going to knock us out. We can't go over here on the edge. We can't come up the middle because their defensive line is too solid. Good defense shapes offenses. And you're taking away that strategy now because you have players second guessing themselves. One of the biggest things my coaches taught me was on defense, you don't think. You react. You can't do that anymore.
No. You have to think.
You have to think.
And when you think, you slow down. You slow down.
Oh my God.
And I agree with that.
Oh my God.
I understand that, but also understand that in other sports you have the same kind of examples. For example, in hockey, you can't leave your feet. As soon as you leave your feet, that's a penalty. You're gonna get 5 minutes.
My contention is that hockey is not the same thing. It's not the same thing. In hockey, a play isn't determined